system's rigged, man, it's time to break free. Eyes wide open, gotta see what I see. Standing on the front lines, fighting for the truth. Lift the veil of lies, it's time to be the proof. Take a stand, don't you back down.
Make sure. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you your trial jury oath. So if everyone will please raise your right hand. You shall well and truly try the issue formed upon this bill of indictment between the state of Georgia and Celeste Owens, who is charged with the offenses of malice murder, felony murder, count 3 felony murder, count 4 felony murder, count 5 cruelty to children in the first degree, count 6 aggravated battery, count 7 aggravated assault, count 8 cruelty to children in the first degree, count 9 cruelty to children in the first degree, count 10 cruelty to children in the first degree, count 11 cruelty to children in the first degree, count 12 cruelty to children in the first degree, count 13 cruelty to children in the first degree, count 14 cruelty to children in the first degree, count 15 cruelty to children in the first degree, count 16 cruelty to children in the first degree, count 17 cruelty to children in the first degree, count 18 cruelty to children in the first degree, count 19 concealing the death of another, and count 21 making a false statement, and a true verdict give according to the evidence, so help you God. Please respond with I will. All right, you put your hands down. Is there anybody that does not? Let the record reflect. No answer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we start the trial, I'm going to cover some basic principles of criminal law, and I will also explain to you my role, your role, the lawyer's roles. Finally, I'll tell you how the trial will proceed. Many of you haven't served on a jury before, so this should help you understand how the general process works, how a trial proceeds, and what is expected of you during the trial. You have been selected and sworn to try the criminal case of the state of Georgia versus Celeste Owens. The Gwinnett County Grand Jury has indicted the defendant for the crimes I just previously listed. The defendant has pled not guilty to this indictment, and she denies each and every charge in it. This indictment and the defendant's plea of not guilty present the issue that you have been selected and sworn to decide. The indictment is the way the defendant is charged with committing crimes that violate the laws of Georgia. The charges in the indictment and the plea of not guilty are not evidence of guilt, and you may not conclude that the defendant is guilty based on the charges or her not guilty plea. The defendant is presumed to be innocent until she is proven guilty. The defendant begins this trial with a presumption of innocence in her favor, and this presumption stays with her until it is overcome by the state with evidence that convinces you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty of the crimes charged. You may not convict the defendant of any crime unless each element of the crime is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. His timing is impeccable. Thank you, sir. The burden of proof is on the state to prove every essential element of the crimes charged in the indictment beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant has no burden of proof at all, and the burden never shifts to the defendant to prove her innocence. However, the state is not required to prove the guilt of the defendant beyond all doubt or to a mathematical certainty. A reasonable doubt means just what it says. It is a doubt of a fair-minded, impartial juror who is honestly seeking the truth. It is a doubt based on common sense and reason. It does not mean a vague or arbitrary doubt, but it is a doubt for which you can give a reason based on consideration of the evidence or lack of evidence, a conflict in the evidence, or any combination of these. After considering all of the facts and circumstances of this case, if your minds are wavering, unsettled, or unsatisfied, then that is a doubt of the law, and you must find the defendant not guilty. But if no reasonable doubt exists in your minds about the defendant's guilt, then you may convict the defendant. If the state does not prove the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, your duty would be to find the defendant not guilty. My role is to determine the law that applies to this case. Then I will instruct you on the law that you may apply to the facts in reaching a verdict. I'm giving you some of those instructions now, and I will give you more detailed instructions at the end of the trial. The jury has a very important role. You must decide the facts of this case from the evidence presented, and then apply the law that I give you to those facts. Evidence is how a fact is proved or disproved. Evidence can either be testimony or exhibits. Testimony is what you hear from people who take the witness stand and swear to tell the truth. However, the questions that the lawyers ask the witnesses are not evidence. Exhibits are documents, photographs, and other physical items that are admitted during the trial. The object of this trial is to discover the truth. During the trial, I will admit evidence according to the rules of evidence. Those rules are designed to aid in discovering the truth by making sure you consider only the best and highest evidence. The lawyers are advocates for their clients, and they have a duty to represent their clients to the best of their ability. They must follow the rules of law, trial procedure, and evidence during the trial. They may make motions or objections if they believe that any rule is not being followed. What the lawyers say in making or responding to objections is not evidence. I will admit or exclude evidence according to the rules. If the lawyers make an objection and I overrule it, that means the evidence is admitted and you may consider it. On the other hand, if I sustain an objection, this means the evidence is excluded from the trial and you may not consider it. You should consider only that testimony and only those exhibits that are admitted. You should not assume or infer anything about evidence which I have excluded. If you happen to hear or see evidence that I end up excluding from the trial, you must disregard it in its entirety in your deliberations and in arriving at your verdict. None of my decisions and nothing I say during the trial are evidence. My decisions and remarks do not mean that I favor or lean to one side or another in this case. I am only interested in seeing that this case is tried fairly based on the laws and the Constitution of the state of Georgia and the Constitution of the United States. Sometimes I may need to deal with the lawyer's motions or objections without you being here in the courtroom, so I will excuse you to the jury room. We will try to limit such interruptions, and we ask you to please be patient when that happens. The trial will proceed as follows. First, the attorneys may give what are called opening statements. No attorney is required to make an opening statement. Opening statements are not evidence. They are simply an introduction to the evidence, a preview or outline of the expected evidence. The state goes first because they have the burden of proof. Second, the evidence will be presented. Third, the attorneys may give closing arguments or summations. They may discuss the law that applies to the case and how you should consider the law in light of the evidence. They may also point out evidence they believe supports their position. What the lawyers say in closing arguments is not evidence. The goal of a closing argument is to persuade you to decide the case in their favor. Fourth, I will explain to you the specific law that applies to this case. I will then ask you to go to the jury room and to deliberate and reach your verdict. It is important that you pay close attention during this trial. If at any time you cannot hear or see any evidence, or if you are suffering from any discomfort that distracts you, please inform me or the bailiff, and we will do what is needed to make sure you can hear and see the evidence and give it your undivided attention. If you need a break at any time, please raise your hand or alert the bailiffs. Ladies and gentlemen, you should consider the evidence with an open mind, and you should not reach any final conclusions until the trial is over. Do not jump to conclusions before all of the evidence is presented. To maintain the integrity of the jury system, I remind you that you must decide this case based only on the evidence admitted during the trial and the law that I will explain to you. You may not conduct any research on your own about this case or about people or any people or places mentioned during the trial. You may not visit any places mentioned in the evidence, and you may not refer to any books or documents that are not admitted during the trial. Also, you may not use dictionaries or any other reference materials. You may not use Google or otherwise search the internet, websites, or blogs, and you may not use any other electronic media to get information about this case. Nor should you use any of these sources to get information about legal terms or about the law. Finally, you may not read or listen to any accounts of this trial that may appear in the news media, whether online, in print, or on the radio. Remember that you are the ones who have been qualified as fair and impartial jurors deciding this case. No other influence should affect your decision. For that reason, you may not discuss this case with anyone, including family and friends, or let anyone discuss this case with you or around you, and this includes discussing or sharing information by email, texting, blogging, or any other form of social media, and that also means that you cannot discuss it with each other until actual deliberations begin. That is, until after you have heard all of the evidence, the lawyer's closing arguments, and the law that applies to this case. You must not discuss this case even amongst yourselves in the jury room, during breaks, or anywhere else. If at any point in time anyone hears anyone attempts to contact you, anyone approaches you, or any other thing that is in violation of the rules that I have just given you, you are to immediately notify one of the bailiffs. Does everybody understand that? Yes. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the bailiffs are going to give you notepads and pens. Hold on one second, Ms. Pat. You may take notes if you wish. If you take notes, please do not let your note-taking distract you from paying full attention to the evidence and witnesses. You may not share or discuss your notes with anyone until you start deliberating at the end of the case. Please remember that notes are not evidence. They are only memory aids. They are not more important than your own impression or memory of what the evidence may have been. While you may consider another juror's notes to refresh your memory, you should rely on your own memory of the proceedings. Don't be influenced by the notes of other jurors unless their notes help you in determining your own independent recollection. Ladies and gentlemen, you will leave your notes here during breaks, lunches, when you go home at night. What I always recommend is she's going to give you brand new little notepads. Write your name and juror number on the front of the notepad, and then start your notes on the second page. That way, when you guys take a break or go to lunch or anything else, you put that top page back over it. Nobody can see it. The bailiffs will make sure that nobody messes with them and that they are secured each day and during breaks. Your notes will be in the jury room except when you're in the courtroom, and they will be destroyed at the end of deliberations. Ladies and gentlemen, you will not get a transcript of witnesses' testimony, so you must remember in a way that works best for you and what they have said on the witness stand. Counsel, are you ready for opening?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm ready.
Yes, sir.
Very good.
turn the other way. Fuck your fool. Turn around and put your hands up. I said swallow the food first, then take another bite because she's dropping mashed potatoes everywhere. And try to scoop it off the carpet with a spoon. Then I said stop. She stopped and finally trying to keep going after I said stop. So I'll slap her stupid ass. Oh. Tomato busted in my mouth and almost got on my face.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you just glimpsed is 90 seconds, just 90 seconds, of the life that 8-year-old Amari Hall, her 6-year-old sister Zaire, and their 5-year-old brother Jakari Hall lived in the care of this defendant. The state will expect the evidence to show you that the young child in the middle, who was slapped so hard that her head swung back, is 8-year-old Amari Hall. Her brother Jakari, who's 5, is laying on the ground in the video blindfolded with a sheet covering him as he is stomped and slapped by this defendant. And the evidence will show you that 5-year-old Zaire, who is sitting in the corner, sleeping, who is kicked and pushed so hard into the wall by this defendant, and the one who was slapped so hard and her food taken away, that all 3 of those little children were under the care of this defendant and their mother, Brittany Hall. Ladies and gentlemen, over the next several days, the story of the life, the murder, and the subsequent investigation into the death of Amari and the abuse of her little sister and little brother will unfold before you. It will unfold in the form of testimony, in the form of videos, in the form of photographs. And what you will learn is that 4 months after this video was made, Amari is dead. She is found naked, wrapped in garbage bags, and thrown into the woods. And the evidence will show by this defendant. This story begins on November 21st, 2021. The Gwinnett County Police Department receives a phone call from the mother, Brittany Hall, of the children. The same Brittany Hall who's also charged in this indictment, along with this defendant. You will learn that once the police arrive, they are told that Amari is missing. They are greeted by a very calm Celeste Owens and an equally calm Brittany Hall, who tell them that little Amari, they woke up and she's gone. They are all living in an extended stay hotel called the Hometown Studios, located off Jimmy Carter Boulevard. The police arrived to room 251. Small room, 2 beds, a little kitchenette, a bathroom, and that's it. That's where all 5 police arrive, and they're told that the last time anybody saw Amari was around midnight. And then Brittany, her mom, wakes up, and Amari's gone. This defendant tells the police, oh, I left around midnight. My sister, Diamond Owens, picked me up. And I got back around 4 or 5 in the morning. I went to bed, didn't notice anybody missing. I woke up to Brittany Hall, going outside, walking all around the complex, saying Amari's missing. And then we called the police. And here we are. They tell the police that little Amari is autistic. And they provide a photograph. Except the photograph is when Amari was much, much younger. You will learn. And at this point, every resource of the Gwinnett County Police Department descends onto the hometown studios. There's helicopters, there are canine officers, there are dogs, there are civilians looking, there are police officers, they are walking on foot, they are looking inside cars, they're looking behind dumpsters. The chief of police calls in officers from every single precinct in Gwinnett County to find Amari. They go to every single door of the hometown suites and look, and they don't find Amari because she's not there. There's an incident command that's set up. Civilians are helping, law enforcement officers are looking. And at some point, the officers on scene decide, we got to do something else. It's November, it's cold, Amari's missing, we've got to find her. The Special Victims Unit of the Gwinnett County Police Department arrives. You will hear from them, you will hear what they do. Detective Sorensen is the lead detective at that point. You will hear him tell you that he arrives to fairly calm defendant and Brittany Owens, who tell him, yeah, Amari never does this. She's homeschooled. We work from home. They never go anywhere. We never go anywhere. Just go to the store. The detective is trying to create a timeline because time is of the essence. They've got to find this little girl. They can't get it straight. They can't get their story straight. So after 6 hours of searching and not finding anything, the detectives bring in this defendant, Brittany Hall, and the 2 children who are in that hotel room, Zaire and Jakari, back to the Gwinnett County Police Headquarters, where this defendant then begins to speak to the detective there. She tells them she has no idea where Amari is. She doesn't know anything about where you can find her. She tells the detectives that Amari would wet her bed and that she had all kinds of behavior problems and she was autistic. But you'll hear from Amari's grandmother, Mrs. Wright, who will tell you that all 3 children lived with her at some point not much further before this, and those problems never existed. That Amari was in kindergarten, she was in school, and those problems never existed. That she didn't even know she was autistic. This defendant tells the detectives at that time, yeah, I was one of the caregivers. I would watch her. It was just me and Brittany the whole time. The kids call me Daddy. I homeschooled them. They were homeschooled. They were always with us. I don't know where she is. I don't know where she is. And she tells them, yeah, I was with my sister, Diamond. She picked me up at midnight. I was with her all night long. Well, what she doesn't know is the Gwinnett County Police Department's a little bit smarter. So they go back and they find out that this defendant was being very untruthful and was never with her sister. Was never picked up by her sister, and you'll hear from her sister as well. The evidence will show you that she lied. The police have also gotten a hold of this defendant's phone, along with the phone of Brittany Hall. officers, while they're speaking to Celeste, are diligently working to get into the phone, to get the information on the phone to see if they can help. It will help find Amari, because remember, the only thing they cared about, the evidence will show, would be finding Amari. What they also see is Zaire and Jakari, who are covered in bruises, marks, scars, scabs. You'll see those photographs taken of Jakari and Zaire at the police station that night. You'll hear from retired Lieutenant Randy Work, who will tell you that he bought the children pizza, and they ate that pizza so quickly he couldn't even believe it. Celeste Hall is then charged with false statements, because they know that she lied to them about where she was the night before. Then they find in her phone just a glimpse of what you see, because unfortunately, these are not the only videos in that phone. There are a total of 15 videos that you will see in this trial. And they are this defendant and Brittany Hall together, individually beating these children. And that is why Brittany Hall's name is also on this indictment. But we are here today for this defendant. They also found a search history on the phone. That search history would show the searches that this defendant looked up on the internet on November 19th. 2 days before, she reported Amari missing. One of the things that you will see is that Celeste Owens, when asked by the police, where were you November 19th, as they're trying to get a timeline to figure out where Amari might be, this defendant tells him, I was home all day. All day. But her search history on November 19th, starting at about 4 in the morning, going on till about 3:45 that same day, showed some very disturbing searches. They included what to do when a child doesn't listen, lakes near me, why is it so hard to find missing people, how do sewage drains work, why do kids run away, how do I report someone missing. And they also find a search history and communication to a local U-Haul dealership. Now, at this point, the detectives are very concerned. So the Special Victims Unit now hands over the investigation to the Homicide Unit of the Gwinnett County Police Department, who now become involved and take the lead in the investigation of this case. You will hear from Detective Blackburn, who will tell you that he has now taken over and he followed up on this U-Haul search. And ultimately, the evidence will show that he is able to go to a location nearby, the A1 Mini Storage located in Gwinnett County, not far from the Hometown Studios. And lo and behold, they find, as the evidence will show, this defendant who shows up, dropped off at that location, likely in an Uber, walking in with a mask on her face into the location around noon and renting a cargo van. Her name is on the contract, her address is on the contract, her phone number is on the contract, and there's surveillance video of what the evidence will show learn about flop cameras, which are all throughout the country, and especially here in Gwinnett County, that can track license plates, track movements and locations of particular vehicles. And you'll hear about the movement of that van. That around noon or so, when the van is rented by this defendant, it is then driven to a Family Dollar, and there's surveillance video there of this defendant shopping for bleach and latex gloves, both of which happened to be found subsequently in a search of the room in which they were living, those two items. Then you will find the evidence will show that that van went back to the hometown studios around 1:40 in the afternoon, where it remained until dark, around 5:55, where there's more surveillance video and there is movement of that vehicle. Although you cannot see who the person is, you can see someone walking around. And ultimately, that van leaves the hometown studios and heads towards Tucker. Coincidentally, where Amari is found disposed. You will hear and see information from the location data of this defendant. And you will see that the van around 6:35 is spotted on off cameras headed towards the location where Amari is eventually found. At approximately 6:55, her phone's flashlight turns on. At approximately 6:58, this defendant calls Brittany Hall for a very short call. And then about 7:20 or so, she arrives back at the A1 mini storage facility where she rented the U-Haul cargo van. Had the van for several hours that day. Coincidentally, you will hear that the mileage on that car matched up with the lead detective who drove the route that it would have taken to drive from all those locations to where Amari's body was found and back. You will see surveillance video of this car, this van being dropped off. You will also learn that the only time this defendant's location information is turned off on her phone is when we believe, and the evidence would show, this defendant would have been in the location. The van would have been in the location where Amari was found. Brittany Hall, who is the mother of these children, eventually tells detectives that she thinks she knows where Amari's body is and takes them to the location. They are unable to find Amari that night, and trust me, they searched. But the detectives were not ready to give up. So on November 23rd, the next morning, 2 detectives go back out and they find Amari. They find her body in the garbage bags. On the side of the road, animals had begun to eat the parts of her. You will hear from Dr. Downs. He is a medical examiner, and he will tell you about Amari's broken body. Dozens and dozens and dozens of injuries and scars and marks and fractures. Her lacerated liver. He will tell you about her. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many, many counts on this bill of indictment. But ultimately, it revolves around the death and murder of Amari. The count of malice murder charges both this defendant and Brittany Hall together. All the counts charge them together. You will learn, ladies and gentlemen, that it took two people to kill Amari. It took two people to cover up Amari's murder. It took one person to dump her body in the woods, we will learn. It took two people to beat Jakari and to beat Zaire. And that's why, in this bill of indictment, they are charged as parties to a crime. That means people together who work together to accomplish the crime. And it doesn't matter, the evidence will show who delivered the fatal blow, who didn't, because you will find, Dr. Downs, the medical examiner, will tell you that Amari suffered from battered child syndrome. There's a series of different injuries that ultimately led to her death, and she weighed 54 pounds. She was malnourished. And you'll hear that from Dr. Downs. I wish this was a story, and that this was the story of Amari's murder, her life, and the investigation, but it's the reality of what you will see over the next many days. And ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to pay attention, because sometimes the truth is right before your eyes. Sometimes the truth is right there, crystal clear. And the evidence will show, through the testimony of the witnesses, through the photographs, through the battered body of Amari, that this defendant is guilty of every single count in which she is charged, which is 20 out of the 21 counts in this indictment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mazam. Mr. Greenwald.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is opening statement. It is not an argument. It's not telling you what to do. It is letting you know what we expect the evidence to be in the case. We expect the evidence in this case to conclude sometime on Friday, what's today, Tuesday. So opening statements is sort of a roadmap of what we expect the evidence to be. We do not expect that there will be evidence, specific evidence, that my client, Celeste Owens, killed Amari. They're both blamed for it, and you will ultimately have the indictment that was read to you, that has been referred to, out with you ultimately when you go out and deliberate the case. And you'll actually see the 21 counts in the indictment, wherein they're both charged in 19 of them together. Because I submit to you, there will not be specific evidence in this case that pinpoints that my client delivered the fatal blow or blows to Amari. Now, I'm not an idiot. Standing up here and talking about the death of a child, purported cruelty to children for the two other children, it's heart-wrenching. I get that. It's a tragedy. I get that. But you all, as the judge just swore you in, gave you the final oath, you all are sitting there because you all told us over and over again that you were fair and impartial, right down the middle, not leaning towards one side or the other in the case. Although, as you've heard from Judge Duncan, there's a presumption of innocence that surrounds and protects my client until it is overcome by evidence sufficient to convince you all beyond a reasonable doubt. Not talk, not what we surmise, not opinion, but evidence. There is not, I submit to you in this case, ladies and gentlemen, there is not going to be any specific evidence presented to you all that my client delivered to Amari. Now, the charges are broken up, and I know they were read to you. You don't have them in front of you. You don't have the indictment. But counts 1 through 4 deal with the allegations of murder and felony murder. And Ms. Nazam is right. They're both charged, Brittany Hall, and you want to use the word mother as it pertains to Brittany Hall, who was my client's, we expect the evidence to be, girlfriend at the time, but we expect the evidence to be she, not Celeste, was their primary caregiver. Mom, Brittany Hall, who's not here, not on trial, but her name is going to be all over the place. These are her 3 children. She's indicted in this case. She's charged individually and as a party to the crime, purportedly with Celeste, of killing her own daughter. And so when the police come in and testify, when witnesses come in and testify, when videos are played, recordings are played, photographs are put up on the screen for you all to see, I ask you to please keep that in mind. Brittany's not on trial here this week. No, Celeste is. But in going over the photos, the recordings, the evidence, the statements, the testimony that comes in this case, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Celeste killed Amari. That's counts 1 through 4. And I submit to you, the evidence is not going to be there that she did. We expect Dr. Downs to come in and testify Friday morning, the end of this week. That cause of death was blunt force injuries, malnutrition. Well, again, you're going to hear evidence we expect that it was Brittany Hall, the mom, who was their primary caregiver, charge of dispensing food, giving them food, and was also their primary disciplinarian. And you'll see videos of Ms. Hall, I expect, kicking, brutalizing, stomping on, hitting her own children on the floor in that motel room. Only the allegations are, as it pertains to Jakari and Zaire, that this occurred in July at the Congress Motel, which I think you heard is now closed. So those are the allegations pertaining to the other 2 children, that you get the cruelty to children counts. Charges with Amari are from November. There's going to be supposition, there's going to be opinion, there's going to be guesswork. But ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, I'm going to come back, whether it's Friday or Monday of next week, and ask you, which I'm sure you will do, that you've paid attention to what's gone on in this courtroom over the last 3 or 4 days by the time I come back to you all, and return a verdict of not guilty as it pertains to Celeste Owens. Now, as the lawyers go, we'll turn our podium this way. The witnesses come up here on the witness stand, swear an oath to tell the truth. Jurors don't get to ask questions. So it's our job as the lawyers, yes, we're advocates for our side, but we have to ask those questions that we perceive are obviously relevant and that you want to know the answers to. So at the end of the case, when we come back before you in what's called closing arguments, we can state our positions based upon the answers to those questions that we pose to them and the evidence in the case. When I come back, I'm going to ask you to hold the state to their burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, return a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwald. All right, just stay ready to call its first witness.
Yes, Judge. I think we did discuss potentially some stipulations.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, The defendant and the state have agreed to the following matters. They are stipulated as fact for evidentiary purposes during the course of the defendant's jury trial. Number one, on November the 21st of 2021, police were called to the hometown studios in Gwinnett County, Georgia, in reference to a missing 8-year-old named Amar, M-A-M-A-I-R, parentheses, Amari Hall, hereinafter the victim, close parentheses. Defendant Celeste Owens and co-defendant Brittany Hall both told police that they woke up that morning to find the victim missing. The police were provided a description and photograph of the victim to aid in their search. 2. Defendant Celeste Owens was asked to voluntarily come to police headquarters and speak with police as the victim had still not been located. During the interview, the defendant told police about her whereabouts during the time the victim would have gone missing. Officers were able to confirm the defendant was lying and she was arrested for false statements. 3. Officers obtained a search warrant for the defendant's phone, and an extraction of the device resulted in locating her internet search history along with videos of the victim and her 2 siblings. From the extraction, officers were led to obtain several surveillance videos from the hometown studios, a local U-Haul vendor, a Citgo gas station, and a nearby Family Dollar store. 4. Officers also obtained images from flock cameras of a U-Haul that police confirmed was rented by the defendant. The U-Haul van was seen on flock cameras driving in the direction of where the victim's body was later found. 5. The victim's body was found naked with garbage bags wrapped around it, and the victim was located in a wooded area in DeKalb County on November 22nd, 2021. 6. On November 23rd, 2021, an autopsy was performed by Dr. Downs of the Gwinnett County Medical Examiner's Office. The cause of death was determined to be multiple blunt force injuries to the victim. The manner of death was determined to be homicide. The victim also suffered from malnutrition. 7. The defendants were charged in the bill of indictment as parties to a crime to numerous counts including malice, murder, and cruelty to children. The defendants were subsequently severed after a motion filed by Brittany Hall's attorney was granted. 8. Video surveillance of the hometown studios was viewed by the initial officers on scene. The footage was from an hour or more prior to the police arriving and did not show co-defendant Brittany Hall walking around the hotel as was reported by her. The surveillance also did not show the defendant or the victim during that time. This testimony will be admitted by the officer who the information was relayed to. 9. Statements made by the severed co-defendant Brittany Hall are contained in reports and body camera of the responding officers and describe the circumstances surrounding the victim's disappearance. These out-of-custody statements explain the conduct of the officers and therefore will be allowed in for that purpose. These statements would involve a description of the victim, a time frame of the last time she was seen, the items the victim would have taken with her, that the victim was homeschooled and that was on medications for seizures that she took with her since the medications were not in the room. 10. Similarly, co-defendant Brittany Hall eventually led officers close to the area where the victim was found. The state will solicit testimony from officers regarding the information provided by her for the purpose of explaining the officer's presence at the location. Those statements should be admitted. 11. The quote, "be on the lookout," unquote, or BOLO, generated by law enforcement containing information about the circumstances surrounding the victim's disappearance, as well as a photograph of the victim, should be admitted. 12, there are no issues or objections to a business certification form provided by an authorized custodian of records for the following in lieu of live testimony. Surveillance video from Hometown Studios for the relevant time frame. Receipts for room rental at the Hometown Studios for the relevant time periods. Surveillance video from A1 Mini Storage / U-Haul rental location. Receipt and contract for the U-Haul van rental in the name of the defendant. Surveillance video from the Dollar General located at 7050 Jimmy Carter Boulevard for the relevant time period. Receipt from the same Dollar General above. Surveillance video from the Citgo located near Stone Mill Way for the relevant time period. 13. The flock images obtained through detectives are admitted into evidence through the testimony of law enforcement officers who ran and or received the images. 14. Counsel waives a Daubert hearing as it relates to the testimony of medical examiner Dr. J.C. Downs and his status as an expert witness in the field of forensic pathology. 15. Photographs taken of the U-Haul van with Arizona license plate AL06742, taken by crime scene investigator Kay Cochran at Gwinnett County Police Headquarters, will be admitted without the testimony of said crime scene investigator, as foundation will be stipulated to for those photographs. Are those the stipulations as propounded by the state
Yes, Your Honor.
and as by the defense?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
I apologize, Your Honor. What did you say?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Would you like to call the next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The state would call Sergeant Forrester to the stand.
Excuse me, Judge, are they to receive their badge?
Yes, sorry, thank you. You can. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sergeant, will you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you, sir.
Could you go ahead and state and spell your name for the court, please?
It's Sergeant Michael Forrester. First name is Michael. Last name Forrester.
All right. And Sergeant Forrester, how are you currently employed?
I'm currently a sergeant with the Gwinnett County Police Department.
How long have you worked for the Gwinnett County Police Department?
20 years.
Tell us a little bit about the training and the experience that you have in order to have the position you have now.
Over the past 20 years, I've been through close to between 3,000 to 4,000 hours of training. The academy had between 400 to 700 hours of training here with Gwinnett County. Every year we go through training of different types, get different certifications. In order to get to my position, I have to go through we call it field training officer class, so I can train other officers, then can get promoted to corporal through other training classes and stuff like that. And then eventually, a couple of years ago, I got promoted to sergeant. So.
All right, all right. So Sergeant Forrester, are you a certified police officer by the state of Georgia?
I am.
Now, have you worked in various parts of the county throughout your tenure with the police department?
Most of my career has been at the West Precinct, which encompasses Norcross, the city of Peachtree Corners, and parts of Lilburn. For a short period, I was in detectives. worked general crimes and auto theft, where I also went to other parts of the county to investigate those crimes.
So I want to go ahead and take you back to November 21st of 2021. Were you still working in the same area, Norcross, as you just told the jury?
Yes.
Now, were you involved in the investigation of Amari Hall when she was initially reported missing?
Yes.
Now, tell us a little bit about the nature of the call that you received prior to responding.
Initially, it came in as a missing child. A couple officers responded. I believe it was around 30 minutes into the call when they had not been able to locate her. I responded to the scene. That day, I was an acting supervisor. We had one sergeant on duty that day. So myself and another corporal were assisting with supervisor responsibilities that day.
Do you recall around what time you responded to the hometown studios?
It was mid-morning, somewhere between 9:30 and 10, I believe.
All right. Is there a protocol that is in place when there are missing children reported to the Gwinnett County Police Department, or does it depend?
It kind of depends on the situation. Like I said, initially it came in as a missing child. The first responding officers got there. The very first thing that we usually do on missing children, even missing adults, is we'll search the house, or in this case, the hotel room. We'll also search the areas right around it. You kind of start small and then work your way out. After the first initial officers weren't able to locate her either in the room or in the general vicinity on the hotel grounds, is when we started getting additional officers to the scene to start a more thorough search outside and of the hotel property.
Now, go ahead and describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the area. Tell us about the hometown studios, its layout. Just describe it for us, please.
Sure. This particular hotel is one of three that sits off of Jimmy Carter Boulevard. Behind the hotel is a wooded area that has a pretty steep bank that drops off into the access road of Peachtree Parkway onto Jimmy Carter Boulevard and Peachtree Industrial Boulevard. So it's a pretty busy area back through those woods. If you're facing the hotel, off to your left, there's another hotel, and behind that is a big wooded area. And then on the other side of that is a apartment complex. In front of the hotels, there's a car wash. There's a restaurant, I think it's a hibachi style restaurant. And then across the street, you have a Waffle House, McDonald's, two-story shopping area, with small little shops and stuff like that. The Jimmy Carter right there is a total of 5 lanes, got 2 going each way with a center turn lane. So it's a fairly busy area as far as traffic goes.
Do you recall the room number which you responded to?
I believe it was 251.
Okay. And was this on the first floor, second floor?
It's on the second floor.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what happened when you got there.
When I first got there, I met with the 2 officers that were there. And my first, instinct was to go and start getting information about the child. We had officers coming to the area. We already had some officers out in the area. So we needed to get as much information about the child that we could to find out, her name, her age, what she might be wearing, the circumstances behind when she went missing, how long has she been missing, that kind of information.
Now, you eventually did that, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, and prior to that, I want to show you a few things. Judge, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Sergeant Forster, I'm going to show you what has previously been shown to defense counsel and marked as State's Exhibits 1 through 4. Could you have a look at this and see if you recognize those?
Yes.
And what are they?
They are photos of the exterior of the hotel where I responded to that day.
Okay. And to your knowledge, do those accurately reflect the hotel as you remember it being and being familiar with?
Yes.
Any material alterations or deletions or adjustments to it to your knowledge?
It's been like this for almost 20 years.
Okay, all right. Judge, at this time, I would move to tender into evidence States Exhibit 1 through 4. Again, I have previously shown these to defense counsel.
Any objection?
Correct, Judge, no objection.
Admitted without objection.
Thank you, and may I have permission to publish these as well?
You may.
Thank you. All right, Sergeant Forrester, I am going to show you what has been previously marked as States Exhibit 1, 2, 3, and 4, but we'll start with States Exhibit number 1. Please describe to the jury what it is that States Exhibit 1 is showing.
That is the exterior of the hotel, 7049 Jimmy Carter Boulevard, Hometown Studios. It's a two-story hotel. It's actually got a total of 3 buildings on the property.
All right. I'm going to show you States Exhibit number 2. Do you recall what is it that we're looking at here?
So that's just a little cut through to the walkway, and then behind that light brown beige wall there is the staircase that goes to the second level.
All right, and I have States Exhibit number 3 as well as going into States Exhibit 4. What is it that we are seeing here?
So that was the staircase leading to the second
Okay.
level. Make a right, and the door all the way to the right of that picture is 251.
Is that the door with the yellow tape over it?
Yes, it is.
All right, Sergeant Forrester, you met with who when you first got there?
To the scene or to the room?
To the room.
To the room. When I walked into the room, I met with the mother and another lady that was in the room.
Okay. Do you remember the name of the mother?
Off the top of my head, I do not.
Would that be Brittany Hall?
Yes.
All right. And did you also see this defendant, Celeste Owens, present as well?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the demeanor of each.
When I walked into the room, they're both in the room. One of the females was sitting on the bed on her phone, just kind of sitting there. The other female was kind of, I don't want to say pacing, but just kind of right in the area next to the bed. Kind of describe that room a little bit. When you first walk in, there's a king or queen size bed directly in front of the front door. And then to the left of that is another bed of the same size. And then just on the opposite side of that is like a mini kitchen. It's got a sink, a fridge, stuff like that. It is an extended stay hotel, so place to be able to prepare some meals and stuff like that.
All right, Sergeant Forrester, I am going to show you what's been previously marked as States Exhibits 5, 6, 7, and 8, also previously shown to defense counsel. Could you have a look at those and tell me what those are, please?
Yes, these are photos of the interior of the room that I was just describing.
And do those accurately reflect the room as you recall when you arrived there on November 21st of 2021?
Yes, of course, there's some items that bedding that have been moved around, luggage, stuff like that, where we had searched stuff. But
Okay.
as far as the furniture, stuff like that, everything's pretty much the same.
Any material alterations, deletions, or adjustments that you notice on any of these?
No.
Judge, at this time, I would move to tender into evidence States Exhibits 5, 6, 7, and 8, again previously shown to defense counsel.
No objection.
Admitted without objection.
Thank you, Your Honor, and may I publish these as well?
You may.
All right, this is going to be States Exhibit number 5. Could you explain to the jury what it is that we're looking at here?
That's the door leading into the room. That's the first bed directly in front of the door, and that is the bed that the two adult females stated that they used, where one of them was sitting when I walked in.
All right, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit number 6. Is this just a wider
Yes,
vantage point?
it's the bed on the right is that first bed when you first come in. The bed to the left. When I got there, there was two other children sleeping in that bed. One to the far left, one to the far right, with a vacant spot in the middle.
Sorry.
And then you can kind of see the kitchen area off to the left as well.
All right, I'm going to move over to State's Exhibit number 7. What are we looking at here?
It's just another shot of the room. You can see across from the beds, there's a little stand above that. You can't really see it in there. There's a TV. Just on the other side of that wall, there's a rod for your hanging clothes and stuff like that as well.
And finally, State's Exhibit number 8.
Yes, that's basically, that's the second bed that was in the pictures, and then the little kitchenette area, and then that doorway leads to a bathroom.
And is that the entirety of the room?
Yes.
There's nothing else, there's no balcony or anything else
No.
there? Is there one exit in and one entrance in, one exit out?
Correct.
Just one door?
Just one door.
And what information did you get about Amari? Tell us what you were told.
We start off by asking if we don't know at the time, is it male, female, age, name, are there any medical conditions that we need to know about? During this time, at some point during the conversations, we were told that she took medication at 10 o'clock at night and 10 o'clock in the morning. Also, during one of the conversations I had with the mom, she mentioned to me that her child did have some form of autism, but high functioning, which personally I know a little bit about because I do have a child that also is high functioning. So it helped me relate a little bit better as far as asking questions about how Amari would respond to us, as far as would she run from police? What are things that she would be attracted to? Things that normal kids would do, children with any form of autism may vary in that to some extent. So it was important to try to get some information from mom about her, about that kind of stuff.
Was the majority of your conversation coming from Brittany Hall, the mother, as you were stating, or was it coming from this defendant? Who was doing the talking, do you recall?
The majority of the conversations I had was with the mother.
Okay.
Towards the end of my day out there, I did have some conversations with the defendant as well.
Was anybody else in the room other than this defendant and Brittany Hall?
Two other children. They were in the bed asleep.
Do you recall which bed they would have been on?
The one that was closest to the kitchen area right there.
You could stand up if you need to, sir.
Sure. So they were in this one. One was on this side of the bed. One was on that side of the bed. And then right in the center, there was an empty spot, potentially for someone else to be sleeping, but it did not appear that anyone had been in that bed.
And I think what you were pointing at was State's Exhibit number 7 there in demonstrating. Now, as you are at the hometown studios having these conversations and gathering the information, are there other law enforcement officers around?
Yes.
Is there a lot of activity that is occurring around the hotel?
Yes. So as I was in the room, of course, I went up there with Officer Tran and Officer Soto. they were the first responding officers, and they were going to be handling the actual report. So they were gathering the information for the report as I was also getting information to pass on to the officers that were responding to the scene to start searching for the child.
And do you know the names of the two other children who were in the room?
I do not.
But you understood them to be the siblings of Amari?
Yes.
Now, what were they doing with all this activity happening around them?
As far as I can remember, they were sleeping almost the entire time.
So you don't recall them coming up to you or talking to you or moving around or running around?
No,
Did they try to look out the window to see what was going on?
no,
And they didn't want to look at the flashing blue lights and the police cars that you recall?
no.
Did you notice any children's toys or children's things in the room at all?
I don't recall that. When I respond to a scene like that, I'm not paying attention necessarily to that kind of detail.
Were either Brittany Hall or Celeste Owens crying?
Like sobbing, crying, no. The mother at one point, I remember seeing her like wipe a tear, from her face, but not crying where, you're flowing tears type of crying, no.
Were they, did either Brittany Hall or defendant Celeste Owens seem frantic to you?
No.
How would you describe their demeanor?
Fairly calm. Nothing erratic.
Were you able to determine if Amari had ever left the location before on her own?
If I remember, she told me that she'd never have. This was the first time.
And at some point, were you told if there was any surveillance video at the hotel?
Yes, the hotel there does have some surveillance videos.
Did you have an opportunity to either see any of that surveillance video or be notified that other officers had watched it?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So during part of the questioning as far as what happened that night prior to officers getting there, we were told that
Judge, I'm going to have to object. I don't have an objection to hearsay, but I would ask the officer to say, instead of we were told, who specifically made the statement. Otherwise, it's just dangling out there. We were told. If he recalls who made the specific statement.
That's fine. Sergeant Forster, can you answer that question?
Sure. What I recall is the mother telling us at some point she had gone to the gas station through the parking lot. It's a BP gas station to buy Amari some candy. When she got back, Amari wanted the candy. She was told she could not have the candy. And so that was kind of the end of that night where she went to sleep. Was told, don't remember if the mother told us or if the defendant told us about what time she came to the hotel. So we just had some knowledge of both of them coming and going from the hotel. So officers went to go review the video to see if any time from when the mother came back from the BP with Amari to that morning when officers got there, if we could see anything that matched with those statements, and also see if we could see Amari leaving the property.
Okay. And were you able to see Amari leaving the property?
I was not, no.
Any officer to your knowledge?
No.
Now, let me ask you this. When you got there, were you given any information about whether or not Brittany Hall had gone to look for Amari right before calling the police?
Yes, she said that she had left and looked around the hotel property for her child.
And did officers in the investigation while you were there review surveillance for that time period to see if that's in fact what happened?
To my knowledge, yes, they did.
And was any information relayed to you about whether or not they could see at least Brittany Hall walk around the building prior to calling law enforcement?
To my knowledge, no one was seen walking around.
Was there an actual search of the property that was conducted of the Hometown Studios?
Yes, there was.
Was there a door-to-door search of every room there?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure of every room. I did participate in some of those. One of the things that we did is we made contact with the management. One of the guys that lives on the property is the maintenance guy. He has full access to all the rooms. Every day they print out a vacant room list. So that's the first thing that we did is we started with the vacant rooms, and I went with the maintenance guy who had the key and opened up every room for us, allowed us access into those rooms, to the laundry rooms, to the supply closets, anything that they had. I'm not sure if management continued to contact guests or not, but I did not contact any guest rooms, just the vacant rooms.
Okay, but you did accompany the maintenance man to look into the various rooms that were there that you testified to?
Yes.
And at this point, was there a canine officer that also went out?
Yes. He arrived when I initially was in the room talking with the mother.
So you're having the conversation, but there's still searches happening around you, is that right?
Correct.
And ultimately, an incident command center, was that set up there at the hotel?
Yes. Sergeant Much, who was the sergeant in charge that day, set up the incident command.
All right. We'll talk to him. Now, with all of this that happened, were you able to locate Amari?
No.
Did this defendant tell you anything about the last time she saw Amari?
I'm trying to recall. What I can recall is her stating that when she came home that morning, I don't remember what time, it was sometime after the mother had gone to bed, that she came home and went to bed.
Do you know how she found out Amari was missing?
I don't recall.
Okay, that's fine. And was that the extent of your involvement, your role in this investigation?
One other thing that I did participate in with the canine officer is we did, I went with him and we did a search of the property with the canine.
Okay.
We looked in every vehicle through the windows. We went to the dumpsters, the big wooded area in between the hotels and the apartment complex. We did a thorough search of that, where we had contact with at least 2 homeless individuals that live in that wooded area, who said that they had no contact with anyone all night. They'd stayed there all night. We ended up going into the apartment complex, kind of walked through that back up to Holcomb Bridge Road, made a left, circled back around to the hotel, searching the area to see if we could see any signs of her there as well. Later on, we also did a search across Jimmy Carter in a big wooded area over there as well.
The Hometown Studios, is that located here in Gwinnett County, Georgia?
It is.
I think that's all the questions I have for you right now. I'll hand you over to Mr. Greenwald.
Good afternoon, Sergeant Forrester. How are you, sir?
Good, sir.
Just a couple of brief questions. So the hotel room that you went into had 2 beds, right?
Correct.
You did not make note, and obviously when you're entering a room, not only are you potentially looking for the missing child, but you're looking for potentially evidence of the crime, I would assume.
At that time, we were looking for a missing child.
But as a trained police officer, I assume you would have made note if you had seen blood droplets or blood smeared on the floor, on the wall, correct?
Not necessarily.
In this
Correct, I did not see any.
Also did not note any broken furniture, tables, chairs, anything of that nature, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
And I understand when you went in the room, your primary focus was in regards to finding a missing child, but based upon your training as a police officer and all your years of training and having been investigations, you did not note any evidence of any type of struggle that had gone on in that room, correct?
Not to that I saw, no.
And the information that Amari's medical condition, you got that from her mom, Ms. Hall, that I think in your own words, she said she was high functioning or had high functioning autism. That was from Ms. Hall, right?
I believe so, yes.
As well as the medication she was purportedly taking, I think twice a day.
Yes, I was told twice a day, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, may the witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
No objection.
All right, thank you, Sergeant, you're excused.
Thank you, ma'am.
State ready to call the next witness.
Yes, Your Honor, we are. We will call Sergeant Much.
Sergeant, will you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear affirm the testimony you're about to give be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear.
Thank you.
Sergeant, could you state and spell your name for the court, please?
Bless you.
John Much, M-U-T-C-H.
Right, and Sergeant Much, tell us how you are currently employed.
I'm employed with the Gwinnett County Police Department as a sergeant.
How long have you been with the Gwinnett Police Department?
March will be 15 years.
And tell us about your training and your background that you have.
So initially, when you get hired, you go through about a 5-month-long police academy, learn everything from criminal law and procedures to driver's training, firearms, defensive tactics, things of that nature. You go through a field training process, and then as your career continues, you receive additional ongoing training and specialized training. Most of my additional training has been in criminal investigations and supervision and leadership and things of that nature.
And I'm going to go ahead and take you back to November 21st of 2021. Were you called out to the hometown studios off Jimmy Carter Boulevard?
Yes, I was.
And what was the nature of the call?
It was a missing persons call. The initial information was that I believe the initial text of the call said a 9-year-old child was missing
Okay.
and was last seen around midnight or 1 a.m.
And when you got there, what was your responsibility?
I was the supervisor for the patrol district on that day.
Now, tell us a little bit about incident command. What does that mean, and is that what you did that day?
Yes, so essentially I acted as the incident commander for this police response. Basically, the incident commander is the person who's overall responsible for the management of the police response for a particular incident.
Okay. And where did you arrive when you got to the hometown studios?
When I first arrived, from what I recall, another officer or two had already made contact with the individual in the hotel room. The first thing I did was make another contact at the hotel room just to make sure the child was not in the room and just ask some basic questions to kind of get a grasp of what was going on.
So you went back up to the room, was that room 251?
Room 251, yes.
And do you recall who was in the room when you went up there?
Brittany Hall was in the room. Celeste Owens was in the room. And there were 2 other children, I believe. I don't recall their names, but I believe they were around 6 and 3 years old at the time.
And when you went up there, did you have a conversation with
I was kind of speaking to both of the adults in the room, just asking some general questions. So I was kind of speaking to both of them.
Were you trying to gather information to aid in the search for Amari?
Yeah, I wanted to get a grasp on her, physical, mental state, just any information that might indicate where she may have gone or who she may have left with or when to go see, just anything that might help us find her.
Were you provided with a description of Amari?
Yes.
Do you recall what the description was?
Black female, approximate height and weight, and then some clothing description. I don't recall the exact clothing description, but we was given a clothing description.
Now, at some point, was what's called a BOLO or be on the lookout generated?
Yes.
Judge, may I continue to approach the witnesses?
Feel free to move about the courtroom.
Thank you very much. I'm going to show you, Sergeant Munch, what I had previously marked as State's Exhibit 9 and shown to defense counsel. Can you tell us what that is?
Be on the lookout is essentially a bulletin of information that gets generated and distributed amongst law enforcement, usually to provide critical information for something that police are looking for, in this case, a missing person. So it would have, some details about the incident itself, where she might have been last seen, some physical descriptors, and most importantly, a picture.
Okay. And what I am showing you here, State's Exhibit 9, was that the BOLO or be on the lookout that was generated for Amari Hall when it was reported that she was missing?
Yes.
Does it accurately reflect the information, as you recall, gathering from various sources that day?
Yes, it does.
Any material alterations, deletions, or anything to that particular?
Not that I can see.
Judge, at this time, I would move to tender into evidence State's Exhibit number 9.
No objection.
Admitted without objection.
Thank you, and may I publish as well?
You may.
Sergeant Munch, the information that is on here, what kind of information is it?
So you're going to have a brief summary of the nature of the incident, which in this case was a missing person. It's going to provide a description, a date of birth, an address or last known location, stuff like that, clothing description, and a scenario of the incident itself, saying she was last seen this time of night, midnight to 1 a.m., November 21st, and then some information about her medical condition, in this case, that she had autism.
Do you recall where the information came from that lists the description of the clothing that Amari was wearing at the time she went missing?
So that would have been information that would have been relayed to me. Either some of it was what I obtained directly from when I went to the hotel room, and then other information that the officers that were working the scene provided me.
Okay, and that would include the height and weight, etc.?
Correct.
And this is disseminated to who?
So it'll be initially it would have been disseminated amongst the entire police department, but it would also be distributed to adjacent agencies, city agencies like Norcross Police Department, things of that nature, as well as surrounding agencies.
And what about the photograph? Do you recall where that was obtained from?
I don't know specifically. That would have been one of the officers on the scene that would have gathered that. That would have been part of what I would have requested for somebody on scene to collect a photo so we could have that for the BOLO. And
that would have come from either of the two women in the room, correct?
That would be my understanding,
Okay,
yes.
because the officers would not have this, or you did not have this photograph?
No, it would have been provided to us by somebody.
All right. Now, tell us all the different things that were done and the resources that were used to try and find Amari on this day.
Yeah, so based on the circumstances of what we had with this missing person, I felt it was what we call a critical missing person, which essentially time is of the essence. If this person isn't found sooner than later, they're at risk for death or serious bodily harm or something to that effect. So start calling in additional resources to help locate her. That's going to be additional officers to help do physical searches of the area, canine to use their sense of smell to help possibly find a track and locate her. Aviation, a helicopter, with their elevation, they can see more than the officers can on the ground. They have technology on board that can, detect heat, find things on the ground that officers wouldn't be able to see on the ground. At that point, it's just calling in more resources to try to find her.
Did you utilize what's referred to as a reverse 911?
Yes.
Tell us what that is, please.
That's essentially an emergency notification alert that our 911 communication centers will send out to within the geographical area. So that'll provide, critical information of an event or information that the public needs to be on the lookout for. In this case, it would have said that there was a autistic child missing, something to that effect in the description. The reverse 911 sends alerts out to, I believe, landlines, and then any mobile numbers that had signed up for the system.
Did officers, were they tasked with physically going to surrounding businesses to review surveillance videos there?
Yes.
Do you recall what businesses?
The hotel itself, there were a couple of adjacent hotels, I believe. Those are checked. There was a car wash, which was almost next to the hotel itself. Those were the main ones in the immediate area, but they would also look for video even in shopping centers across the street. There's anything that might help us.
And was any footage of Amari located on any of those surveillance videos that the officers were reviewing pursuant to the incident command that was sent up?
No, not to my knowledge. There was no video of her.
Do you recall how long you were out there?
I arrived around 9:30 in the morning, and I was there until about 6:30 p.m.
And around 6:30 p.m. when you left, had Amari been located at that time?
No.
That's all the questions I have for Sergeant Marshall.
All right, thank you.
I don't have any other questions, Judge. Thank you.
May the witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sergeant.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Nazim, my understanding is you're ready to be finished for the day. Is that correct?
For the day today, Judge, due to scheduling issues, we will have the remaining witnesses start again tomorrow.
All right, very good. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this concludes for today. My estimation is we will probably stop every day around 5 or 5:30. I like to try and find what I call natural breaks. So, and rather, if he's in mid-sentence and it's 5 o'clock, okay, it's 5 o'clock, we got to stop. I would prefer to get through a witness so they don't have to come back, et cetera, whenever necessary. Just to tell you guys how the day goes, typically, I'm going to ask that you guys report downstairs every day at 8:45 if you can be on time. If you can't be on time, then it'll go to 8:30, then 8:15, then 8 o'clock, until we can all get here on time at 8:45. Report at 8:45, we'll have Ms. Barnes and company bring you guys upstairs every day. We will start promptly at 9 o'clock. I take a morning break again around 10:30, but keeping in mind where a witness is or what's happening. Typically take a lunch break. We'll try to break every day from noon until about 1:30, since you guys have to leave the facility and come back. I try and give you a little bit of extra travel time, and then stop every day between 5 and 5:30. Give or take a few minutes, but that's, I'm sorry, we will have an afternoon break around 3 or 3:30. So if anybody has any questions or concerns about any of that, please let your bailiffs know. I am going to remind you guys, and I'm going to tell you guys this probably every day, 4 or 5 times a day, whenever we take a break, whenever you go home, whenever you go to lunch. You are not to discuss the facts of this case with anyone, nor are you allowed to let anyone discuss this case with you. If you find yourselves riding in the elevator with myself, Ms. Nazim, Ms. Owens, Mr. Greenwald, or you could talk to the bailiffs, but anybody else, it's going to be really awkward. It's going to be like riding that elevator where you look around and you look at the ceiling and you can't, because we can't talk to each other. And it's not that we don't like you, don't care about you, or anything like that, but it's to avoid the appearance of impropriety, number one. And number two, we don't want anybody to misinterpret anything, and we don't want you to start thinking about anything that you may or may not have already heard by way of testimony or evidence. Does everybody understand that? Don't look up anything, no Google, don't, just nothing. This case only exists within these four walls, okay? All right, thank you guys. Do you want them to leave their pads on their chairs?
They can leave them right there on the chairs.
All right, very good. Y'all be safe. I'll see you in the morning.
On the clock, make sure you write your name on the clock.
Ms. Nazam, anything to take up outside the presence of the jury?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Greenwald?
No, no.
All right, I'll see you guys. We'll start bright and early at 9 o'clock.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And if we can open up the courtroom at 8:45, please. Y'all have to be here at 8:45 too.
Yes, Your Honor.
You have to be here at 8:30.
Sounds good. I hate to get up early and get on the side of Judge Hamel. I just can't.
Okay.
I got my own murder trial early today, so I can't.
I'm glad you get to watch a pro.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Also, I love that you have your dog in the bed.
It throws something at you.
Brian, did you got something in your eye?
No, good.
Thank you, sir. Y'all gonna put the signs up that tell them not to come in here and clean?
Yep, it's already going up. I'll ship this in with, so they can clean the bathroom.
All right, I'm gonna put this trash can out there too, because I really don't want them, she doesn't touch anything in here.
Do you have a preference about where the pads should go? Should we collect them? Should we leave them here?
I'm fine with them there and everything's locked. Thank you.
And here. Yes.
Who's in charge of the exhibits? We are. I know, you haven't investigated this. I know it wasn't, not anything to keep up to date.
Not yet, wait a little bit more time.
That is 100% correct. All right, check it. I didn't see that.
Also, I heard you talk to one director. She's from Knoxville.
Okay.
She said that she probably expects she is to get.
Yeah.
She didn't make it, so it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, she wanted to know that, and I was like, I don't have a whole lot of time to talk about that, but here's why. Because we don't have enough rules.
She would come back if she could.
Oh, really?
She's only 20. It's a little.
6 full months.
She's some big league in Rockdale now. She's second in charge or something like that. She's
Yeah, I drive that far from some big wave call.
Oh, you're talking about doing photos on this? I haven't seen anybody.
Oh, did you get it? Hey, you mind your business. I don't think that weird.
You would not know how.
A judge shot to death in his chambers by his good friend, the now former sheriff. Now, new details are coming to light about what could have been going on in the background involving the judge and sex in his chambers. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. It's been nearly 3 months since Judge Kevin Mullins was shot to death in his chambers in Letcher County, Kentucky. And now, recordings that have surfaced that include allegations about sex in the courthouse are giving us some new insight into what may have been going on in Letcher County. The shooting of Judge Mullins shocked anyone who heard about it. You just don't hear about something like this happening. And if you do, the shooter certainly isn't the county sheriff. But Kentucky State Police say that's exactly what happened back on September 19th. Longtime friends Letcher County Sheriff Mickey Steins and Judge Kevin Mullins went to lunch together, and within a matter of hours, Steins was recorded on video shooting Mullins. At a preliminary hearing, a detective described what happened leading up to the shooting.
Are you aware of anything so far in your investigation that would tell us there was any issues at lunch between Judge
No.
Owens and Sheriff Steins?
No.
Okay. But someone on behalf of the KSP has spoken to those witnesses?
Yes, they've all been interviewed.
And there was nothing unusual that had arisen during that luncheon?
I was told that the judge made a statement to Mickey about, do we need to meet private in my chambers? That's all I was told.
Do you know the context of
I do
what
not.
the conversation was before that they would need to discuss in chambers?
I do not.
And have you had an opportunity to review the video?